Welcome to the Seattle Real Estate with Urban Ash, your go-to podcast for all things Seattle and Seattle real estate. Whether you're a first-time homebuyer, an experienced investor, downtown resident, or simply just curious about the latest market trends, we've got you covered. I'm Urban Ash, a 20-plus year downtown resident and real estate professional. Together, we'll uncover insider tips, share expert insights to help you navigate the market, and showcase community leaders and organizations. So join me as we dive into everything from the rental and sales market to the rich community life that makes Seattle so unique. Thank you, Todd, for coming on and wanting to talk a little bit about your company. I think we have a couple of people in common in the marketplace here, and I think that you've done some great work for them, and you have a great name and reputation and what have you. So why don't I kind of just chat a little bit about your business, and then we're going to kind of dive into a couple, key points about the ADU and DADU, the House bill that has been passed or is being passed, and a couple other little specialty items.
Perfect.
Let's start a little bit about your company.
Perfect. So yeah, I am the founder of Schulte Design Build. We've been around since 2001. I'm the classic carpenter turned contractor. It's been a long, interesting journey, but we are a full service design build home renovation company. And we take a holistic approach to, helping people improve their homes to current, that fits their current lifestyle needs. So,
and what is your area expertise?
So we work in the greater Seattle area. We do some work over on the east side, depending on where it is. Typically the I-90 corridor, mostly out of east, just because it's so hard to get around anymore. Mercer Island as well, but basically, Edmonds down to West Seattle, border the Lake Sammamish, and then of course the Sound.
Awesome.
So the work area,
yeah. And then as far as touching on, I guess, the area expertise of, you do remodels and whatnot. Do you kind of have something that you specifically specialize in, or is it kind of all different?
Yeah. So our what we like to do are kitchens, baths, basements, single story additions, whole house renovations where it doesn't necessarily involve opening up the envelope, right? So going in and maybe relaying out a space to make it function better, those kinds of things. So those are our main projects that we like to do. DADUs, ADUs and DADUs as well.
Yep.
So yeah, and we'll even do, outdoor spaces, like, where people want to convert an old building, like a garage, maybe a detached garage, and they want to turn it into more like an indoor-outdoor living space. We do projects like that as well.
Yeah, great. Well, let's actually kind of touch on that, because that was one of the main points here. That's something that's becoming more common, obviously, with the House bill, Senate bill, actually, I think it is 1110. There's been a lot of questions that I've fielded from clients asking, especially with those that have larger square footage lots in the city, how is this going to affect me? What am I going to be able to do with my property at this point? Is it going to increase the value of my property? All those different things. Why don't you, if you could give just kind of a breakdown of what that means, ADU and DADU and kind of all that.
Sure. Yeah, so an ADU, I think they call them AADUs now. I think they've changed the name the city has. But basically an ADU is an accessory dwelling unit, right? That is typically within the envelope of the existing single family house, right? So typically it's a basement in Seattle, because most houses in Seattle have basements. So that's where you would go and turn your basement into basically a apartment, essentially, right? 1 to 2 bedrooms, bathroom, kitchenette, maybe some storage space, maybe a little living space. It could be a studio, right? Depending on space. And there are, of course, some restrictions and limitations and things that you have to consider, if you're thinking about doing that, in terms of separate utilities, right? You have to have a separate meter. There has to be common space to get to certain things. So, yeah, so those are all the things to consider with an ADU. And then a DADU is basically a detached accessory dwelling unit, where it doesn't have to be in your home. It could be a separate structure on your property. Typically, it's in your backyard. There's things that you need to consider for that in terms of, square footage, size, footprint, setbacks, height restrictions, zoning. different lot sizes have different requirements, right?
Mhm.
So that's typically one of the first things we look at. Or if you've got an existing structure, a lot of times like a garage, people will convert that into a DADU, either renovate it if it's structurally sound enough to do so, or it's taking it down the foundation if the foundation works, or it's building from the ground up. So those are typically the two different types of projects we do for DADUs. And the things to consider, like what are you planning on using it for? A lot of our clients want to have extra space for when they have family staying for extended periods of time so that they can have their own space, right? And they're comfortable. Some folks want to use it as additional income, right? Whether it's short-term or long-term rental. So that's one thing to think about, right? Again, I touched on existing or new structure. What's this investment amount going to be? Does it make sense for me to make this investment amount, or should I consider buying another home that may already have everything that I'm looking for, right? And then restrictions, again, the setback, size, restrictions, height, all those things, zoning. So those are kind of high level things to think about.
Mhm.
You're looking at, potentially building a DADU on your home, or an ADU, really.
Yep. With the permitting process with the city, what has been your experience with that? Like, how long is it taking for those type of projects?
Yeah, so typically it's we integrate that into our planning and design phase, but typically just the permitting process alone can be anywhere between 8 and 12 weeks.
Okay.
There is a fast track. I'm not sure if you heard about the fast track with like existing approved DADU plans.
Mhm.
We've not done one of those. We've looked at those, and those are great if they fit into what it is, your lot and all the things that have to be taken into consideration for what you want to do with it. So it's very limited, I would say, in terms of these pre-approved plans. So that's typically why we've not been able to use them, because of all those restrictions and then clients' needs.
Mhm.
Typically are designing it from the, either the existing structure or from, ground up, essentially, right? To
Yeah.
figure out what it is that we can do. But typically it's about 8 to 12 weeks.
Gotcha. Yeah, I can imagine with those pre-designed plans, they don't probably take into account topography and the things that we struggle with here in the Pacific Northwest with all of our hills and all that sort of thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And then you still have to, get the utilities to it,
Yep.
right? That's a big challenge with DADUs. Like, how do we get the
Sewer.
plumbing go to the
Mhm.
sewer? Right,
Yep.
exactly. Right.
Yeah.
So again, they can work for some situations, but typically not very many.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it will be interesting. There are different neighborhoods and areas that have more of the flat lots, but then you kind of look at the square footage sizes and do you have to meet those specific requirements that are set forth.
Right. And does it meet your needs too, the way it's
Yep.
laid out, right?
Mhm.
And does it fit within the aesthetic of the home and all those things, right?
Yeah.
So,
And so that's
and
something that you do consult with the client. If they're like, hey, I have this type of lot, or this is my address, and then you could pretty much eye out, hey, this could work, or this could be problematic, or no problem.
absolutely, yeah, that's one of the first things we determine. And then, even if it's, again, with those pre-approved, we still may have to go in and do a bunch of design work anyways to make sure we have all the information that's applicable to that particular project, right?
Yep, definitely for sure. Wonderful. Well, let's see. As far as your process then, so you have the design, or why don't we just talk about the process in general where take on a new client, do the design phase, and then what typically follows after that?
Yeah, so it all starts with a plan, right? What are we doing? So that's the first step in our process. So our design phase is 3 steps. It's a three-phase process. So it's schematic design. That's the first. Discovery. What are we doing? What can we do? What might it cost? Right, within all the things that we know up to that point. Once we figure that out, the next step is to refine that. Right. Now that we know what we're doing, let's go ahead and get it engineered, finalize all the plans, start figuring out all the materials, all the finishes, all the fixtures, all that kind of stuff. And then the final stage is to get it ready for permitting and or construction, right? So we've typically we have two different sets of plans, one that gets sent off for permitting because they don't need as much information. And then we have another set that we actually build off of because that has to have more information so that all the people involved know what the heck they're doing, right?
Yep.
And then we help folks figure out all those choices, all those selections. We then price it all out and we figure out how long it's going to take to build, right? So that when we're done with our design pre-construction phase, we have a project that's ready to build that's got a permitted set of plans with all the information that's needed. We've got a detailed written scope of work that spells out what we are and are not agreeing to do. We have everything picked out. We have it all priced out and we know how long it's going to take.
Gotcha.
Right.
You make it sound so easy.
Yeah.
Sounds too easy.
Yes, and then of course, then it gets pushed into production, and they execute on the plan, right, with all the information that they need to do so successfully.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And then do you have project managers that are in the field, or is how?
Yeah. So we have in-house management team and in-house carpenter team, in-house design, in-house pre-construction. So what I why I like doing design build, I'm trying to find another name for it, but really it's a holistic approach to this process, right?
Mhm.
It's like we have everybody on the team involved from the very beginning throughout the end of the project, right? So it's not just a bunch of, a group of designers figuring out, planning it all out, then handing it off to the builder only for them to come back and say, well, what about this, this, and this? Have you thought about that? This is more complicated, less complicated. So we get the team involved early so they can have their input so that we're giving our clients the best information we can to help them make the best decisions that solves their problem throughout the process. And then the same, once it goes into construction, we have that same team on the design side helping out as we go through building it, right? They show up and help with tile layout. There may be a design question that comes up once we're in construction. So everybody's involved throughout the whole process.
Gotcha. And so on like the scale of projects, because obviously you'll do full blown, remodels. But what's I guess the smallest projects that you would take on?
We'll do just a single bathroom. Typically, that's the smaller. It's funny. We call it smaller. It's small in size, but it's big in scope because it's one of the most complicated spaces in your house.
Yep.
Right. Lots of finishes, lots of things that are going on, just like a kitchen. We tell people minimum. You think about this process just in decision making for most clients. You're going to make over 100 decisions just for a kitchen remodel, as an example.
Yeah.
We help our clients through that process because it's daunting.
Yeah.
Especially, you can get decision fatigue, but our goal is to make it as easy as possible by process of elimination. Based off all of these, these constraints that we're dealing with, here's the things that we think are going to work the best for you. Which one do you, right?
And you really do need that coaching because I mean, just being in the field and seeing people, oh, I'm remodeling my house and it takes them 2 years to do it, right? And whether they're kind of piecemealing the contractors themselves or they're having trouble making the actual decisions because there's so many trends out there. There's their wants that they need or the things that they want personally, and then you have the trends, you have the noise, and you have family, friends saying this, that. But you just really have to have someone that's like, okay, these are you have to make the decision now. This is our timeline. And that's just so much more efficient because at the end of the day, you have to stay on a timeline for this or else it could run your whole lifetime of owning the property.
Absolutely. Our goal is to come up with a plan and execute on the plan, right? Yeah. And, of course, it's home remodeling, things happen and we deal with it accordingly and things can change. But our job is to really mitigate risk for both our clients and ourselves as much as we possibly can by planning everything down to the knob on the vanity before our crew shows up to start tearing your house apart.
Yeah.
Right. For all those reasons you just described, right?
Yep.
And I always tell our clients, think of this as your trusted advisor to guide you through the complexities of residential remodel, to provide you with the information that you need so that you can make the best decision to solve your problem.
Yep. It's a good way of putting it.
Yep. So yeah, so bathrooms are our smallest. Our typical projects: kitchens, baths, basements, DADUs, ADUs. Outdoor structures, we'll do single story bump out additions.
Mm.
Typically, those are like a primary bedroom and bath that
The dormers.
they've got a growing family and they need some space from their kids,
Mm-hmm.
or kitchen bump outs to make their kitchen bigger. So yeah, those are kind of our general typical projects that we like to pursue.
Yep, and I imagine with the age of the homes too, you've gotten to know what the challenges are with the original construction and what you're dealing with just based on when the home was built.
Absolutely. We take all that into consideration because we know an older home is going to have more problems to deal with, more issues, typically lead,
Mhm.
asbestos, right? Structural issues where it wasn't built, you know, as up to today's standards, of course. So yes, we take all that stuff into consideration when we're working with our clients on their homes.
Do you have a favorite year built or decade of homes that were built that you love working?
Oh, you know, I think we like the variety of, you know, everything from the, you know, early 1900s all the way up into the 2000s. We've remodeled homes that were built in the 2000s.
Mhm.
Those newer homes are less problematic, like as you just pointed out. But I would say favorite, I think we like the variety of them. And, you know, we let the home drive a lot of the decisions we make too, right? Because people buy homes for specific reasons. They love the old world charm of a 1905 farmhouse versus a mid-century 1960s build, right?
Right.
So I would say there's not one specific. I think we enjoy the variety of doing, you know, different styles.
Gotcha. And you do also condos too.
We do condos, yes. Those have their own set of challenges. Access is a big one. Of course, you know, you're really restricted in terms of reconfiguring spaces where there's plumbing because they're typically, you can't move plumbing in condo buildings
Mhm.
because you know they're typically in you know, you've got your neighbors above, below, concrete slabs to deal with. So those are kind of some of the challenges to working in condo. You've got to deal with a board typically. You've got noise
And frames.
requirements, right? You've got to keep, you know, you can only work during certain times of the day. You got to keep the uh, shared spaces, you know, a certain way. So there's a lot of more restrictions with there, but we absolutely work on condos. Yeah.
Yeah. Wonderful. Yeah, it's hard.
And because of that, that usually adds to the cost too, right? Because it takes more to actually just logistically perform a project in execute a project in a condo.
Yep, that makes sense. Yeah, there's actually a lot of contractors, or just, general contractors that won't even come downtown, right? They just won't even work in the buildings because they are complicated and you have to know the nuances, and your crew also, whoever's coming in and representing you also has to know how to work within those buildings too.
Absolutely. We did one. We did a penthouse a few years ago, and it only had the main elevator. It didn't have service elevators, which a lot of those buildings have for, you know, this kind of stuff, right? So it can be used by crews going in and out. So we had to, you know, the doorman, every time we came in and out, he had to let us in. We had to pad the, you know, the elevators. It was a big thing just to get in and out of the building. And then everything's on an elevator, so you can only bring certain size material to the space, right? So instead of a 16-foot stick of trim, everything had to be 8 footers, right? Those
Yeah.
kinds of things.
Yep, that's definitely well, you're a gem, I guess I would say, because again, not many know kind of all those nuances, and I think they would show up with that 16-foot piece of trim and be like, why isn't this fitting? Like, really, this is an issue. So yeah, it's crazy for
Yeah,
sure, but
we
that's
figure
fun.
all that out up
Yep.
front. One of the first things we figure out in our process, right?
Yeah,
So,
good.
especially considered condos, yeah.
Yeah. What do you have any fun or interesting projects that you worked on as of late that you kind of want to share with everyone?
Sure. One that we just recently finished. It's up in the Finney Ridge neighborhood. It was a classic, you know, 1900s bungalow, 2 bedroom, 1 bath that these folks bought. I think they bought it in 2010. They bought it sight unseen. They were moving back from Europe. They were over
Mhm.
there for a few years working, and they bought it, moved into it. The basement was a funky semi-finished space. It actually was lath and plaster. So they thought it was original to the house, you know, had multiple floor levels. It was just janky and funky, low ceiling. very typical of, a lot of older homes in Seattle. But they were gonna, have a family and they wanted more space. So we talked about either digging down, maybe raising it up, but because of where it was on the lot, it was a weird lot. Like literally the house is almost at the sidewalk. To do anything with the footprint would have required to meet today's, restrictions, which wouldn't have made it. It didn't make any sense to do anything to the structure. I mean, really, they were kind of limited to tearing it down and rebuilding it, right? And they just didn't have that budget, so we decided to renovate the basement. It's pretty major. It was going to be replacing slab, doing some structural upgrades, and then finishing it out for 2 bedrooms, a bathroom, laundry room, family room, utility room. Very typical of about 1,000 square foot footprint for Seattle. And we got the lath and plaster torn out. Like I said, we thought it was original. Well, come to find out, it wasn't. We discovered about 80% of the floor system above was burnt from a previous fire that they had no idea about. So they were shocked, of course. We were shocked. It was probably one of the craziest things we've ever discovered on a project. It was pretty bad. We had our engineer come out and look at it, and he originally was thinking it was a tear down, that it couldn't be salvageable. But just with working with him, we came up with a plan where we could salvage it, because they were kind of stuck. Like, do we sell it as is and take a loss? Or do we tear it down and spend another $1 million+ on top of our big budget already of $500,000 to build something what we want? They just couldn't swing it.
Yep.
So luckily we were able to, our engineer was able to figure out a way to do it. Literally, we surgically replaced the floor system while maintaining the upper floor. It was pretty incredible. About 3 months to the project. And they were so grateful that we were able to come up with a solution. And it was another investment, but it wasn't $1 million.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing about that fire, we did a little investigating once we found out online, right? Went to the Google, and we found a couple articles from the late 20s of that property. The articles were about a still fire that happened. It blew up. I guess they were cooking hooch in the basement illegally back then, Prohibition.
Yeah.
The stills blew up. I guess it even said something about they had an illegal gas line coming from the gas meter somewhere on the street.
Wow.
That's about it. It shook the foundation to its core, or shook the top off the roof off the whatever. It's pretty interesting. So, fun, I mean, crazy that we, encountered an old still fire in a house. So that was pretty interesting.
Well, it's amazing with the old homes what doesn't get passed down, like that information. So, you said
that was not in a disclosure anywhere. They had no idea, and they were stuck. Like, they couldn't have no recourse at all. I really felt bad for them, so we felt really good about being able to help them.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, it's especially with the older homes, just like not knowing, and it's not like the seller prior, maybe they had maybe there was like 3 homeowners, but prior that had no clue whatsoever, and then all of a sudden it just kind of surfaced after the fact. So yeah, I mean that's a very, very interesting one. Makes you also, I have a Craftsman that's actually coming up in Wallingford on the market, and the owners themselves did a whole remodel, and they've documented absolutely everything and done research actually back to the past of where the house, like just keeping that history. And it's like one of the only houses I've ever represented that actually has the full history of the house, all the remodels, everything that's ever been done. And it's just quite, we had our inspector over, and he's like, I have never seen a house like this before, with all the documents, all the history, like everything, there. It's just, you don't see it.
I would ask you, is there value in that for you and your potential buyers, right?
Absolutely. I mean,
research permitting, like what projects were done? Were they done? Did they pass? Who were they done by? We've had clients reach out to us who have bought houses. Actually, I think it was your friends that we have in common when they sold their house. The new owners reached out to us to ask us some questions about some of the work we did that we were able to help them with, right?
No, I mean, it's very valuable because people, when you're purchasing a home, especially the older homes, you step into it and you have to then start as a home or a new buyer, you're stepping into a home that you're trying to then figure out the nuances of how everything works. And, the everything from like the little creaks that you hear to some thuds to maybe a flickering light to like all these different things that are going on. And that's just, I'm not in the walls, right? Or in the foundation. So, it is very helpful to know and have an actual like history of who did what when. And I
A-
do, yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That reminds me of, we had some clients who actually were my neighbors. They moved, and they had an inspection done, but they had me come look at it as well. I remember looking at this inspection report. It was a brand new, beautiful composition roof, brand new, like a 30-year roof, good material, but it was installed by somebody who clearly was not a roofer, and it was
Hmm.
already leaking. So literally they had to replace a brand new roof right when they moved in.
Yeah.
I mean, they bought it knowing that, but still, like, another great example of that, right?
Yeah. You have to do your due diligence,
Yeah.
and hopefully the owners prior have set it up to where they did their due diligence so that they're passing that on. And if not, in a certain way, you're walking into it trying to just kind of figure it out and then hope that you have good people behind you that could help you kind of, pull back the onion, and
Absolutely.
figure it all out. So,
Yeah.
well, great. Is there anything else you want to kind of touch on about your company? I think you guys are in Ballard, right?
Yeah, we're based out of Ballard. What else? Again, we are a full service design build
Mm-hmm.
remodeling company. Again, the holistic approach to what we do, and really our goal is to, you know, change the paradigm of all the horror stories you hear in remodeling by doing it the way we do it, right? And being able to have honest, open dialogue with our clients, not only the good things, but the not so good things, right? A lot, folks that we talk to when we're interviewing people and people are interviewing us, one of the things we talk about is what's important to our clients: communication, trust, transparency. We want to know what's going on, whether it's good or bad. We know things happen in remodeling, just, we want to know,
Mm-hmm.
versus it being a surprise, right? The horror stories of, costing twice as much, taking twice as long, or, because they didn't have their process and system set up in a way that allowed all that stuff to be transparent through their process, so that they're being realistic with their clients from the very beginning,
Yep,
right?
definitely. Yep,
Usually it ends up costing them more going down, ending up in that situation versus knowing that it's going to cost what it costs at the very beginning.
yep,
Right?
yep. In a certain way, you get what you pay for too, right? So,
Absolutely.
so,
Absolutely.
and I think that's very apparent in our world just because we see all different, tradesmen, all different people doing all different things. And,
Yep.
a
Yep.
lot of that is dependent on budget too of the person. But at the same time, it's better to do it right the first time than having to do it 3 times wrong.
Absolutely. Yeah. And having the relationship is super important, right? Because, this is a long process. We're in people's homes. It's a very personal thing for most people,
Mhm.
right? It's their sanctuary. So, that relationship is super important, right? It has to be a right fit for all of us for it to
Yeah,
be successful.
definitely.
So,
Sweet. Well, I think we could kind of end on that note. We will be reposting this. I'll put your contact information out there, as well as all the links to all your social channels. And if there's any questions, if anyone has, feel free to reach out,
yeah.
and make the connection. And I'm assuming you're taking on new clients.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, currently right now we're about a month and a half, 2 months out from starting any new design work.
Okay.
And
Good to
then
know.
typically that depend on the project, 3 to 6+ months to get a project ready to build. And then typically we can start anywhere between 1 and 2 months after it's ready to be built. And then again, depending on the project, 3, 6, 12 months typically for construction time. But yeah,
Do you
right
have
now we currently have space in our schedule for you know
fall?
nights.
Yeah. Okay. Is there a time of year that's busier than the other for you?
Typically, it used to be that this wintertime slowed down, but because our process is so long,
Hmm.
it kind of just continues. We do see less people interested in our services around the holidays, beginning of the year,
Mhm.
typically just because they're busy doing those things.
Yep.
But yeah, there's really, we stay pretty consistent throughout the year.
Wonderful.
Yep.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on and learning a bit more about your company and what you do. And we will make sure to post your contact information everywhere.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate the opportunity to do this, and thank you for hosting.
You bet.
Yep.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much.
All right. Take care.